So welcome to this week's Deanos Adventures, and this week we're going on a very special journey. We're going to go back in time. We're going to go back and explore a very big building that's sitting behind us at this moment in time. It's a building that stood derelict in my own town, in the town of Shrewsbury, since 1987, and it was built in 1797. And it was used as a flax mill, and in 1887 it was then turned into the Maltings. Some people call it the Maltings, some people call it the flax mill. Now you understand why, because it's had two uses in its lifetime. Now this building is a very important building as far as buildings that we know today, because this was the very first iron framed, complete iron framed building, which meant that they had the strength and the structure to go up more levels, and the buildings would last longer than what they built before. So that also led on to steel frame buildings, and then you've gone to skyscrapers and everything that you've got today. So this is evolution of the skyscraper. So this is the very first skyscraper, I suppose. So today we're going to go on a guided tour, and we're going to go round and we're going to go and see the different parts that's open to the public. You can see behind me at the far side at the moment, that section of the building I believe is all shut, and they're redoing all the roof over there at the moment in time. Now there is a crown, a big crown that sits on the top of that building. I'll see if I can put a picture up of it at some point for you. So, but I've also come across the company, which luckily enough some of my friends work at, where they are working on the crown and, what's the word, doing it up, regenerating it. So at the end of the video there's a very nice clip, and we can see that all in its kit form before it goes back on the roof, because when it's back up on the roof it won't look half the size and we won't be able to see it. So that's quite exciting. So I hope you enjoy this little video. We're going to go for a guided tour around the flax mill, or the Maltings in Shrewsbury, and we're going to learn all about its life. So hope you enjoy. So we've just come up off the car park, and this is what the front of the building looks like these days. This is the main building and of the Maltings as we see it today, and this is where all the work is going on at the moment. We've got a couple of things to the side where we can get in and we'll have a quick look round, and the buildings they've done. So this was the first part of the regeneration that they've done here, which is what they've turned into a little exhibition. You can go down into the room on the left here, which has got a bit of a screen on that tells you a bit of history about the place. The second building down there has kind of got more stuff, but it's all on boards in there rather than a TV screen. So these were the main offices. From our quick walk around that we've just seen now, This is where they all used to clock in before they started their work, which has all been done up very nice. So I'm assuming back in the days where they I'm assuming that they all stood here when it was time to start work, and then when the clock struck it was all time to go in. So we're going to go and have a quick look. Well, this is the building from behind, so you can see the size of the building. It's quite a big building. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 floors high at this point. So it was a flax mill, and then also used for brewing. Two separate things, I think, if I understand correctly. You've got the railway line that just runs behind the building, and you used to have the canal that's in front of the building. And that's how they used to transport all their stuff in, and then later on the road come into play. And so we're going to go into the dye house and the stove house. So it was the dye house before it was the stove house. So you just have a quick look in. So this building, as I say, you look up into the roof and you can see all the metal frames. So it's all, as I said, this is one of the first metal framed, first metal framed buildings in the world. This is where skyscrapers and everything originated from. So, you know, as much as there isn't too much to see here, this is how it all began. So this is just a big empty room, but as I said, even though it's a big empty room, this is all about the metal structure that's with it, and this is how technology's moved on today, and we are where we are. And the stories are quite interesting of why they built this, and they lost the owners lost their mill. It burnt down, so they decided to build something that was stronger, and this was the outcome of it. So, but the guided tour will tell us all the stuff next week, all the proper information about it. So right, we're going to walk back out of here. I'm going to take a quick walk around the outside of the building and just show you some of that. I'll leave the camera on at the moment. You can see all the old electrics up there. They're not like that anymore, are they? So I say that was the dye house and the stove house. Just going to take a quick wander around the back of the building. You can have a quick look at the building from the rear and see the other sections of it. So they plan to turn these into flats, and I think the upper levels are going to be flats. I think the bottom section's going to be turned into a cafe and an exhibition centre and art centre. So it's nice. It's a pretty spectacular building. I never remember this building being in use, but it was in use when I was a little kid, but I was too young to remember. So we're just going to go around the sides of the building. I say, even though it's a bit derelict at the moment and doesn't look very good, I suppose this is our chance to see it, the last chance to see it in this state. Next time we see it, it should all be done up and looking pretty spectacular. So I suppose as a follow-on video in a few years time, when they've opened it up again, this will be pretty amazing. So we're at the rear of the building at the moment, and the railway line is just behind us and still there today. So I thought I'd just quickly show you where the canal runs down in front of the building. Where I'm actually standing now, I would actually be in the canal itself. So this is the canal wall that you can see, and you can see apparently all the white on the wall is actually where the water levels were. As we pan across it to this wall here a little bit, you can see where the water levels of the canal was. So, and this is where they used to bring their stock in and move it out. And there is talks of the canal also being regenerated and brought back to life, so that would be pretty spectacular, to be honest, because there isn't a canal in Shrewsbury at this moment in time. There's one's on the outskirts of Shrewsbury, but I just wanted to show you that before we go anyway. So, and I thought that was quite interesting. Apparently there is just up the road, there is one of the old bridge signs still left from where the canal used to run before. So
and this particular site ended up with the world's first iron frame building, because you don't normally think of Shrewsbury as being at the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution. And of course, you know, because of this, we are a significant player in that whole development. Shrewsbury in the 16th and 17th century developed its wealth from the wool trade with Wales. The woolen merchants of Shrewsbury would buy up woolen goods from Wales and finish them off and market them in England and across the continent. But by the 1790s that had fizzled out effectively. The last woolen market was held in Shrewsbury in the 1790s. So the woolen merchants, if they had any sense, were looking to move it to other enterprises that were up and coming. And the Benyon brothers, who were Thomas and Benjamin Benyon, had somehow learnt about a man called John Marshall in Leeds, who was the son of a linen draper. Now, what he had done, he had when his father died, and he was in his early 20s, he had looked around and he thought, well, you know, how am I going to, what sort of business am I going to transact? And he'd seen the rise of cotton spinning in the previous 20 years or so, and thought, well, if that could be applied, the same industrial processes could be applied to flax, then that would be a whole new industry, and I would be the lead person in it. If you could just move it so that give those people a bit more room, thank you. Marshall had found somebody who had developed a very basic bit of flax spinning machinery, and with the help of a chap called Matthew Murray, he developed that into something robust enough to actually be worthwhile to build a factory and start large-scale industrial spinning of flax. Which what he did, he found some investors and did that, built a factory in Leeds. And then his first level of investors dropped out, and that's where the Benyon brothers come to the rescue, so to speak, and invest in his mill in Leeds, and they become partners in the business. But in 1795, that mill burns down, and that highlights the problem that people were finding with spinning mills was that you build a 4 or 5 story structure like this, you cram it with machinery, which by definition is generating tiny amounts of fibre into the atmosphere, and the only artificial light you have involves native flames. So it's not surprising that they kept on burning down. So the hunt was on to find a way to make these buildings fire resistant. And of course one strategy which immediately sprang to mind amongst those who were up on this sort of thing was, well, you know, at the moment we build with brick and timber. Why don't we replace the timber, which is the bit which is flammable, with iron? You know, there were several people looking into this. One of them was a man called William Strutt in Belper in Derbyshire. And he did get as far as building a mill in Belper, which had iron columns, but it still had wooden beams. He encased it in plaster and things like that, but it still had wooden beams. But he was actually in correspondence with a man in Shrewsbury called Charles Bage, who was actually a land surveyor by profession, which meant he was very competent in things like calculating, you know, mathematics and things like that. But you know, he was also interested in the properties of iron and the application of new technology across a range of fields. And part of a wider circle. He knew Thomas Telford, he knew this up-and-coming iron founder called William Hazeldine, who just opened the foundry down in Colham. He was in, he knew the iron founders in Ironbridge, including the Reynolds brothers in Ketley. So there was a great upswelling in Shropshire of technically minded men who were fascinated by the possibilities of iron technology, and Bage was one of them. The Benyon brothers, when the mill in Leeds burnt down, seemed to have said to Marshall, well, we'll rebuild the one in Leeds, don't worry, but let's test out this possibility of building a fireproof mill in Shrewsbury, because that's where there's a man, Charles Bage, has got these ideas, and of course there's lots of expertise in Shropshire about iron, so it's a good place to go. And Marshall was, seemingly persuaded of this. They brought Bage into the partnership as a junior partner and commissioned him to design this fireproof mill that he thought he could build. Now, the site they chose was this one. It's a greenfield site. It's on the northern edge of town, just by a main road going north. But a real key feature that really worked in their favour was that at this very moment a canal was being built to bring coal from the East Shropshire coalfield into Shrewsbury. Now that was ideal for their purposes because they planned this as a steam powered mill. Up to just a couple of years before, if you wanted to build a big mill, you had to build it in a remote river valley to take advantage of a fast-flowing river to power a water wheel. Places like Cromford. But now that steam engines were just becoming available, you could build your mill on the edge of a populated town with existing communications network. It was a hugely advantageous thing. Now, as it turned out, for the canal company, it was an added bonus because they would have a new customer, and so they actually rerouted their canal, which originally they were just going to take it on that side of the road there, but they actually rerouted it to cross the road by the pub, the inn was called the Comet at the time, and now the Coach, and brought it literally alongside this site, across here, and then back over the road there, and there's a sign over there which says Flaxmill Bridge, because that's what the bridge that they had to build ended up being called, because here was the factory. Oh, sorry. That's what happened, and Bage duly designed this really very substantial building, which we will go in and have a look at in a minute in some detail. but first I'll take you over there and explain how the various buildings of this overall complex developed over the next following few years. Discuss the development of the overall site. So as I say, they cast the iron down at William Hazeldine's new Coney foundry down there and bought all those components, and an awful lot of them, as you'll see when we get inside, with all the columns and beams and rods. And then over the road were brick fields, so it was easy peasy to make the bricks that they needed for the walls. Now, at the time when they built this in 1796, 1797, there was a brick tax per brick. So, as an early tax avoidance scheme, what they did here in the first few years was they made each brick a bit bigger than you normally have. That's quite useful for the purposes of working out the earliest buildings on the site. So the main mill building is built with these big bricks. The blacksmith shop and the stables is built with these big bricks. You have that cross mill over there, which I think was built about 1800. At right angles to the main mill, was also built out of big bricks as well. Those are later complications that I'll go into in a minute. So that's been very handy in sketching out some of the development of the site. So where am I? So 1797 on a ordinary steam engine from Bolton and Watt in 1797, which was installed just at the south end of the main mill building. They didn't have a dedicated engine house at that stage. 20 horsepower, state-of-the-art thing. Now, as I say, 1800 or so they built that cross mill. Now that cross mill was the heckling block initially. Heckling is the final process of preparing the fibres, combing them out to separate out the long fine fibres, which are known as line, and the short stubby coarse fibres, which are known as tow. And both of those were spun here. This was fundamentally a spinning mill, and then mainly, at least in terms of the line, possibly the tow, they were twisting that into thread, and this became a dedicated thread manufacturer. So it wasn't about making fabric here. There was a bit of weaving that is in the accounts in the 1810s, but we don't even know whether that was on site or whether they just commissioned people to weave stuff. And at that stage, they couldn't produce really fine yarn, so they wouldn't be producing fine linens. Later on, the yarn they produced could have done that, but not at this stage. So that's a bit of a red herring in terms of weaving. It wasn't a weaving mill. Right, so early 1800s, moving on, they also had a dye house and a stove house here. Not these ones as they stand now. These are as largely rebuilt and remodeled in the 1850s, but on this site here. Then in 1804, the partnership between Marshalls, Finland and Bays breaks up, and after a bit of discussion, Marshall agrees to buy them out of this site. And the Bennions and Bays probably go off and build another iron frame at Flaxmill just down the road in Castlefield. That was demolished in the 1830s after the Bennion brothers died, and no one was interested in taking it on, except the Flax warehouse part of it, which actually survives in 7th Street in what are now 3-storey houses. It was converted into these 3-storey houses, and so on. And the Bennions also got Bays to build an iron frame mill in Deanos as well, and so on. Meanwhile, Marshall decided, well, I've got this site, I'll carry on investing in it. He installed gas. He got Bolton and Watt to install a gas plant here in 1811. And funnily enough, only a few months later, the cross mill, which had been built in traditional fashion, timber brick, burnt down. So at that stage they rebuilt it on much the same footprint, and I think reusing quite a lot of the bricks, with an iron frame. They also, at much the same time, built a flax warehouse a bit further on, which butted over the canal so they could hoist the materials in directly from the canal boats. And beyond that, and that flax warehouse had much the same iron frame as the cross mill, very similar. And beyond that there was an apprentice house for the parish apprentices that they made use of for about the first 20 years of the life of the mill. And then after that, the children joined with their families. So that was the basic development of the site, and the Marshall Company ran it themselves from Leeds, with managers based here from 1804 until the end of its life, when Marshall's grandson wound the business up and it all closed down. So I'll leave it at that for a moment and carry on with the story a bit later on after we've gone into the...
Into the building we go.
This railing, look down this quite interesting hole.
See the bricks and concrete down track.
Oh, okay.
If you'd like to spread around so everyone gets a chance to look down the hole. Right. Is your toilet 12:15? Oh, no, there we are. Right. Yes. I said that about 1800 they built the cross mill. They also, at about 1800, they'd put a steam engine in the south end. In 1800 they put a 40 horsepower engine in a dedicated north engine house, which is what we're standing in now, here. If you look down there, you can just see the arc and something across there. Now that gives us some idea of the sheer radius of the wheel of this steam engine. It's absolutely huge. Forget about that ceiling there. There was no ceiling in this engine house when it was built. It was a 3-story edifice to contain this very large steam engine with its very large wheel. Big stone blocks to help give a solid attachment for the engine. It really is twice the power of the. Only 3 years later they've got an engine that's twice the power of the one they started with. It's actually by a rival manufacturer. Our friend Matthew Murray in Leeds was now producing steam engines in a company called Murray, Fenton and Wood, in theory, they argued that Watt's patent had come to an end. There was a long legal dispute about it, but either way, they had this steam engine here. And when we open for business, this will be where the visitors will, one of the first parts of their visit will be through this space, and there will be a big projection to convey the sheer scale of this engine to them. Having said that, the walls that we're looking at now on these 3 sides, they rebuilt the engine house in the 1830s when they replaced the engine. Obviously, over time, new improved steam engines were developed, and there is a bit of a contrast between the big bricks down below from the foundations, as it were, and then the normal-sized bricks of the 1830 rebuild, and so on. And then you have a window and quite a stylish door there, because the likelihood is that the engine house was where you brought your guests to impress them with your state-of-the-art technology that you were using. So it wasn't exactly utilitarian. They put a slight architectural fanciness to it all. Right, we'll now go through and look at the iron frame. What phase actually are. And it's actually a very good vantage point to understand what Baines designed. So, here we have, he designed a building which is about 200 foot long and about 40 foot wide. He has 3 lines of cast iron columns forming about 18 bays, 18 or 19 bays. And those cast iron columns transversely, each trio of columns supports a pair of transverse beams spanning the width of the building that are joined just off centre there. You can see that joint there and going all the way down that into the thing. And when we're on the second floor, some of these pictures will be a bit more evident, a bit easier to see. Now the beam has a sort of Y-shaped cross-section, and the flange of that part of the Y, an inverted Y, so the flange there provides a base from which Baines was able to spring these brick arches over every bay. And then the valleys between the brick arches were filled with rubble, and then the whole thing was floored over with brick floors. So that way he's eliminated wooden floorboards, wooden floor joists and wooden beams from his design. And that was the object of the exercise, to eliminate exposed wood in the design. The third element in the iron frame are these wrought iron ties that bolt through the side of the beam and stop the brick arches springing apart. And again, we'll understand then more when we go upstairs. As you can see, they've dug down here and exposed how these columns were set up on at the ground floor on these pads. But above this, of course, there are, and we'll see it upstairs, there are actually mouldings in the beam over there, which are socket-shaped, and you can slot the next beam, next column into that. So the whole thing is very cleverly thought through for not exactly kit assembly, but he's thought through how this is going to be put together, which of course no one never attempted to put together an iron frame before. But another element of the cleverness of Baines' design is that he's also thinking about power and putting the machines in. So on this ground floor and also on the third floor, he has these square-shaped openings. And the steam engine, the drive shaft from that, went through the opening, and then you can have drive belts from there. So, the whole thing was designed as a coherent whole. He didn't just run up an arm frame mill and tell them, oh well, it's your job to work out how you're going to fit in the power source and the machinery. You know, he thought it through as part of a coherent whole. Now, when we opened for business in 2021, the whole of this ground floor, up to, you know, a few bays short of the far end there, will be dedicated to an exhibition about the story of the mill. Much more elaborate and extensive display than we currently have in our visitor centre. So this, the thought being that this will always be something that the public can visit and get an understanding of the importance of this building and to be able to see the iron frame. What else was I going to say? Oh yes, the only other feature I'll mention at the moment, there are a number of holes going down here which they're filled with, in part filled with concrete. That's because an additional bit of strengthening that they're putting in this phase, they're going to put in some additional, I suppose, steel columns that will go up the centre here. All part of strengthening the steel frame structure. But when we get on the second floor, I'll explain the other works that have been done to ensure the structural stability of this frame, which after all may survive the test of time for 200 years, but you know, nonetheless, we have to be absolutely sure will survive for another 200 years. Right, well now we're up here and go through a little low opening on the stairs outside here.
Everything comes up off concrete. These didn't. These come off the clay.
I talked about the steam engine at that end, and mentioned that in 1810 she built a dedicated engine house at that end, and put in a slightly more powerful engine at that end. But for a long time, of course, you know, steam engines also require boiler houses, which is easy to forget. You know, for the first few decades of the time, the boiler houses were adjacent to the engine houses. But sometime in the 19th century, and I can't remember when, they reconfigured things and set up a pair of boiler houses here. So the one on that side, one on that side. The flumes with all the smoke and stuff, the exhaust fumes, as it were, from the boiler house generating steam, goes through these flues here into this chimney, the internal side of the structure of which has been exposed here. And this is something which it was easy to forget about. I mean, most of the time I've been involved in Flaxmill, I haven't been thought about chimneys, because it was demolished in the 1880s. Once the Flaxmill closed, it was just a nuisance, so it was demolished at some stage. But we mustn't forget that this place had a huge chimney which would have dominated the skyline in this vicinity. Happily, early this year, a family came forward. One of their forebears had a shop in the 1880s, just over there on this frontage, and a photograph was taken standing proudly in front of his shop, and we're ignoring him and his shop because behind him is this huge chimney. And indeed a photo of, you know, you can even see some details of the mill. We've never had a picture of this mill before it's converted to a malting before. Which is amazing, you know, the photography has been around for years, but nonetheless, none has come to light so far until this time. So we have this little view, but it emphasises what a very big chimney this was. You know, when this is a terrace on which people will sit their coffee and business of the cafe at the south end when we open for visitors, they will reproduce this shape as some sort of picture, so people get some feeling of the fact that there was once a massive chimney. Right, we'll go up to this end. Of course, at this end, we're going to have a cafe. You can see this lovely visualisation here. And that will be open to the public, but also as well as the visitors. And also, the floors above are going to be commercial office space in order to bring in income. To be in use that doesn't cover up the buildings, cover up the armed trade. So that seems to be the best use that has the smallest impact on the integrity of the building, yet will still ensure that there was income coming in to maintain the building. So that's the plan, and that's what those upper floors will be. So we hope that all the office workers will also make use of this cafe. And the kitchens for the cafe will be in there, through there, in the South Engine House. And that will actually be quite a good set of kitchens, not just to provide tea and coffee and a snack, but will allow the potential for catering on the wider site for events and things like that as well. So that should be quite an attractive offer for someone. Now, meanwhile, I need to explain some of the other features you can see here, like these big round section columns that are sitting here. What are they all about? Well, this relates to the conversion of this building into a maltings. The Flaxmill closed in 1886. It stood empty for about 10 years, and then William Jones came along and thought, so this floor space, this will convert quite easily into a floor maltings. And that's what he duly did. So he bought the building and set about converting it. So one of the things he needed for his malting process was steeping tanks. And he smashed these holes at the end of the floors, all the way up actually, and in the cross door, and he put these holes in to install massive great iron tanks, steeping tanks. And the idea is you put the barley in the tank, you add water, the barley starts to germinate, and the whole malting process is basically about getting the barley to germinate. That turns the starch in the barley into sugars, which is what you need for processes like brewing and also distilling and things like that. So that's what you want to do, that's why you're malting the barley. So it absorbs the water, starts germinating, you open the hatch on the bottom of the tank, it goes into a barrow, and then you spread it out onto the floor. Now these floors had brick, as we've discussed, had brick floors. That wouldn't have been much good for him because that would be too many crevices for the barley to get stuck into. So he took up the brick floors and he spread concrete to give him a nice smooth floor. Trouble is, of course, that added to the weight the arm frame had to support. Now, sleeping tanks, he dealt with the extra weight of those by adding in these additional columns. So they're 100 years later, they're 1897, not 1797. And they are, wherever there are sleeping tanks, you see these big columns, and we're going to keep those, at least here by the cafe, because that's explains part of the story, as you can see there. And finding ways to retain some of those columns just to make it obvious, the two phases of the story. Now, what else did William Jones do to convert this into a maltings? Well, he blocked up 2/3 of the very big Flaxmill windows completely. Because the Flaxmill needed as much natural light as it could get into it, But for the purposes of malting, You want sunlight, but you want to be able to control it and know what it's particularly like. So he blocked up 2/3 and he reduced, partly blocked the other third and put in smaller windows with elaborate shutters, enabling him to allow just the right amount of air as well as light onto the floors. Now the malting process, you spread the barley, the germinated barley out, and then turn it a lot to get very even germination and to stop the little rootlets sort of clumping together and so on. So, and then when it's ready, when the starch has turned to sugar, you take it off, arrest that process by roasting it in a kiln. So he built a kiln at the far end there, in the gap between the end of the back of the north engine house, the cross mill and the flax warehouse beyond, and literally drop that kiln into that space. So that's the kiln. Maybe I've covered everything. I can't remember now. So that's the main elements of the conversion that he did, which of course, you know, on the one hand, added to the strain on the iron frame by the extra weight of the steeping tanks and the concrete. But on the other hand, if he hadn't taken this building over and given it a new use, it would have probably been demolished. You know, what use was it to anybody? There wasn't going to be a new flax mill use. You know, it ensured another 90 years of use of this building and took it through to the late 20th century. The Maltings finally closed in 1987. That ensured that, by which time the importance of this building had been recognised you know, and it was a listed building, which meant that it couldn't just be knocked down through lack of economic value. Right, we will now go upstairs. Now this is particularly rough here, because they've taken up the top of the concrete screen. This is quite a good place to explain the works that have been going on since we won got the lottery money awarded in early 2017, and the phase 1 of the contract was, you know, which ran from about April 2017 till the end of December 2018, was the nitty-gritty of ensuring the structural stability and integrity of the building after, you know, 200 years of use and abuse and abandonment and reoccupation and reuse and everything else like that. What they had found, I mean, obviously the iron frame is still here, so Bain's got awful lot of it right. But what they found, excuse me, when they, you know, examined the building in minute detail, was that the walls had bowed somewhat, which was not a good sign. But the crucial thing, really, perhaps, in terms of potential, you know, worry in the future, was that they found where the beams went into the wall, the iron beams, they had actually rested, Baines had actually rested them on a wooden pad. And then there was a spike coming up out the end of the beam, and that was encased in a block of wood, which then linked through to a timber ring beam went all the way round above the windows. Now, after 90 years of the flax mill, for at least 60 years of which the mill had wet spinning, nice steaming, humid atmosphere, and then 90 years as a maltings, where by definition it was all a bit damp and puggy. That wood was virtually non-existent, and therefore, the walls were full of voids. And the beams were resting on nothing at all, and therefore, potentially, were going to start cracking as they tipped into, they had no support. So, the main concentration of what was to deal with those structural problems. In addition to the scaffolding that had gone up soon after England's Heritage took over the site, and in case to stop it, suddenly toppling over just in case, sort of thing. They had to put in even more scaffolding that actually threaded through the walls so that they could actually start taking the walls apart in places to insert, they inserted concrete lintels and concrete struts into the voids to strengthen them and ensure that there were no more voids in the brickwork. B, they unblocked the blocked up window openings and rebuilt their faces with specially commissioned 30,000 new big bricks so they could fit them in with the existing big brickwork. And that was an incredibly complex and logistical exercise. And yet, the contractors, Croft, managed to deliver that both on time and on budget. Terrific achievement. Not only that, they actually ended up rather ahead of themselves. And so, although it hadn't been planned initially that this would happen, they were able, at the end of the contract, towards the November, December 2018, to actually put the windows in, which was a complete bonus, and meant that, by the end of last year, coming along this road, as the sun set slowly in the west, you've got the glint of the sun on the windows, and it was all transformed, and people could really see that this building was going somewhere after 30 years and more of apparently just sitting empty and unloved. So that was a terrific achievement. The next phase, which started early this year, is phase 2. As ever, I forget the bit about the roof. Beige didn't attempt, when he built this, to put a massive red barn roof truss on this building. That was a step too far. What he did on the top floor, the brick arch was much steeper, and over each of the brick arches he put little brick and timber slate roof, which is why it's got a sawtooth profile as you see it from the road. So they stripped all that down, and they found the original cast iron valley gutters, 200 years old, still sitting there, and most of them were in good enough condition to send up the road to a specialist firm that sit up there, and they conserved them, and they brought them back and they reinserted them in place. They put in a bit of extra waterproof lining and everything else like that, so it's probably more waterproof that roof than it's ever been. And they've rebuilt it all and reslaced it, and it looks tremendous. And when we reopen to visitors in 2021, they will have repaired the hoist tower, so we'll be able to take people up what will then be called the Jubilee Tower, and you will be able to see how that roof looks from above. Meanwhile, phase 2. Phase 2, well, they're doing conservation work on the South Entrance House. I think that's fairly straightforward, fairly straightforward, this building. The main focus perhaps is on the kiln. They've effectively removed what remained of the kiln, the pyramidal kiln roof, because that was in a very sorry state, and probably wasn't even the original 1897 roof. I think they've come to the conclusion that actually it was replaced anyway mid-20th century. So they put in a whole new steel pyramidal roof, which you can see that they're now cladding and that will be covered. And the moment, the inside bit, which for many years was just called the rusty metal, not a lot else, is now at the moment called scaffolding. When that's taken out, that will give them this huge space into which they are going to put the lifts and the stairs that the office workers will use to access these floors. And that's great bonus because they haven't had to work out some way of inserting lifts and services into the most historic part of the building. You know, as the kiln is 100 years later, and you know, just a straightforward malting kiln, it's less historically important than this iron frame. So that's a bonus. You've got that big open space you can use for that purpose. And the other thing that they're working on is the hoist tower, as I mentioned. For the moment, they've taken off the decorative cast iron coronet that tops it, that was put on by William Jones. Of course, he was doing his work of conversion in 1897, pre-Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, and you could buy these cast iron coronets in kit form from a firm called McFarlane to Glasgow. So they're taking it down, it's being conserved up in Halscott, and will be reinstated, you know, when they've prepared the hoist tower. All terrific. I mean, it's fun, you know, it's fascinating. You went up to see it in its component parts, you know, and you can see that, you know, it would have been a case of, you know, bolt portion A to portion B and strut A to strut B, you know, because there's four bits of everything that all bolt together and give you your crown. And it'll look fantastic when it's done. Right, now we can go over here, because this is very good. Where they exposed it here, you can see it makes a bit more sense of what I was talking about downstairs. You've got the beam being supported halfway along its length by the column. You've got the casting within the beam for the socket for the next column above, so it will be slotted in. And then you've got the wrought iron tie bolted through with square duct there, and then the next one along and so on. Another thing that is very fortuitous for our tours this weekend is that because of fire regulations, they're going to have to paint the columns with in-two methods paint. And in order to do that, they've sandblasted them down. All the layers of paint that are on there have been taken off. And for the moment, they're exposed, you know, as they first came out from the casting by William Hazeldine down in Cullen 200 odd years ago. And that's meant that it's actually been possible to see a few bits rather of flaws in the casting, and also the sort of ridges where the edge of the sort of the casting mould was. So that's been a bonus really, and then soon they'll be painting this and then getting back up. So there's a short window of opportunity for people to see these in their raw natural state, as it were. Obviously it will be photographed and recorded in incredible detail, no doubt. Anything else I normally say? No, I think I'm largely done. Oh, the other feature is this floor, you can see they've scraped off the top layer of the concrete, because what they're going to do, I mean, at one point, a few years ago, they thought, oh, maybe we'll just take the concrete off, that was a good idea, take the weight off the frame. They experimented inside of that, not a good idea. Potentially very, you know, how we do it, we drill it, which causes a lot of vibration. And then, of course, the brick arches come up like that. And how do you know that you're not going to hit into the brick arch and damage that? So they decided in the end that was too ambitious. What they are going to do is they're going to put down a new screen, which will have I think it's fiberglass like reinforcement, which again will add to the strength that this floor gives. And I think actually on the first floor, as supported by the ground floor columns and things like that, the new columns will fit into, I think it's more of a steel grid that they'll have on that floor there. So everything adds to the increasing the structural integrity of this building so that it lasts for another couple of hundred years. And these show you the additional ties that are put in as well. Pairs of ties that are going in through here. So all in all, it was stronger than it ever was. Beige got most of it right, and now they've dealt with the issues.
Can't really see that. No.
With an iron frame. Now, this is 15 years or so afterwards, after Beige designed his frame. We don't know who designed this one. It might have been Beige, it might have been Matthew Murray in Leeds. He certainly started advertising that he could build iron frame buildings. Might have been somebody else. People had taken up the concept of iron frames. Beige, of course, built a mill in Castlefield, another mill in Castlefield, another mill in Leeds. Other people were building them, and a few refinements had come along. So Beige's original design, he supported the beam along its length like that, but it emerged that this leads to a bit of cracking called hogging. Now, they have found evidence of hogging in the main mill building, but it seems to have happened, the first few years and never got any worse. So it didn't become a major issue for the Flaxmill. Now, whoever designed this decided to reduce the possibility of hogging. What they've done is this isn't as wide a building, so you've only got 2 lines of columns. So you've got three beams, and the end of those beams pass around the top of the column. And a piece of a red iron ring, and drop that over the top. And of course, when that causes it cracks and hold our thing together. The cross-section of the beam is a bit simpler, becoming a bit more like the sort of T shape that eventually evolved as a standard sort of shape for a beam. The columns are really quite slender, even more slender than the ones in the main mill, and even have a little bit of architectural flourish at the top. But the basic concepts of the frame are the same. And they use this design in this building and also in the Flax warehouse, which is very much the same period. Here, there's no money for the cross mill at the moment. It's not part of the main project. So it's just sitting here waiting for a good idea and plenty of money and some money to come its way. But it does give you an idea of what the main mill was like before we got our wonderful windows in. A bit gloomy and ill-lit because we didn't be much lighting from all these days. And you can see the fancy shutters that they had to control the amount of air and light. Now, another part of the story of the Flaxmill is in the Second World War. If we could stand away from that wall for a moment. In the Second World War, it was used as an infantry training centre. So the poor unfortunate recruits or conscripts were sent here and accommodated, to a certain extent, accommodated in these buildings. I mean, it was hideous, really, because, at bathing facilities, sanitation was minimal, and they were crammed in. They called it the Rat Hotel, in fact. Obviously, it was in a formal place that had formerly been stuffed with germinating barley, and was alongside a derelict but still water-filled canal. So it was very salubrious. However, they, like people do, they made the most of it, and in their leisure time, they amused themselves. And last year, when they scraped the paint off the walls in the crossmill and found some of this pencil graffiti. So you can just about make out little lists of numbers which appear to be dart scores. something of that ilk anyway, maybe cribbage or something. But also, so in the autumn, we thought, well, what else there is? So in the autumn, some volunteers came and scraped a bit more off the walls here, and they did find other stuff as well as the sort of stuff that looks like dance floors. They found a very nice little sketch of a Spitfire, and a portrait of a lady's head in profile. They found a list of stuff that you need to have in your kit bag or something. And they also found 1 or 2 names scribbled on there. There was a chap called Trotman, and also 1 or 2 army numbers, which we hope will enable us to actually identify these soldiers and find out what happened to them after they'd had their training and got dispersed to the various units to which they'd been allocated. So there's another element in the story of the Flaxmill, and one that we hope to work with, perhaps with the Regimental Museum in future, to tease that out. So that's interesting. So right, we'll go back downstairs.
If you can make that out, that's where the soldiers were playing 501 on the dartboard from the Second World War when they were housed here. You can see other scores and stuff around on the wall. And we've got something where they tried to spell Mississippi.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what we think.
Cool. Right, we're going to move on.
Alright, that's going to be really careful now.
I think we're allowed to do the same one.
It's going to take a round again now. Right, we've got everybody.
So we concentrated on what you can see in the main mill and left out other whole areas we could talk about. Suffice to say that by the 1810s there were 400 odd people working here. At its height in the 1850s there were over 800 people working here. 2/3 of those were women and children. For the first 20 odd years of the mill's life, it used parish apprentices, which it housed, first an apprentice house down the road and then the one they built on the site. So, but after that they just used local children who did actually get half-time education paid for by marshals down at the charity school at St Mary's and St Michael's near the church. But that's the extent of the social history I'm going to attempt to do. But we're happy to come out and give talks to local groups on these topics to flesh them out. And of course we will be putting up more displays about these things generally. The last thing to look at really is this facade of the sky hat, which was the last major investment on the site. A rush of blood to the head by the Marshal's grandsons really. They rebuilt this dye house in the 1850s.
Brilliant piece of brickwork that is.
It's really very quite decorative. It's arcaded facade with
We did offset
very
down the
fine
column with
brickwork.
arches in. Right.
Quite attractive.
Look at
It
that
all
big-
very attractive, and
200
eventually
years
there were
ago.
windows back in there. But essentially it's just a shed, like a locomotive shed or
Far
something.
better tradesmen than what they are.
Two gables. Of course, the roof inside, and those of you who've had a chance to have a look, go inside, it's got a fine tracery roof, because by then that was just something that people were very confident with, and it's very much like the roofs of railway stations and things like that. So that's the end of the tour, folks, and I hope you'll come back when we open for business in 2021.
Thank you. Okay, so here we are in the workshop, and at the moment we are looking at the crown assembly from the top of the Maltings, and it's just had its refurb and will be ready to go back and be put back on the top of the Maltings. So this is a good chance for you to see it in assembly kit form at this moment in time. So stand to the side of this, you can see the 4 uprights for the bell for the top of the crown there. So I'll put up a diagram of how it looks so I can show you the different bits. So this is the uprights, the 4 uprights, as you can see. So we're just going to go over to the section over here, and then around the bottom you've got a stand. This is the centre section of the stand. Maybe you can see those. And there's the four pieces all ready to go back and be put back together. And then these are the sections that go to the left and the right of that. And they're for around the bottom. And then this is the crown from the top. So this little set of steps that we got in front of us, we're not quite sure of what part of the Maltings they come off, but they're from off on the roof by the crown. We don't know if there's something that gets you up to the crown or if this was part of the crown. But so I'm just going to show you a quick look at these. So these are in for the refurb as well.
Voted JD Power's 2019 Most Dependable Brands in one of the UK's most trusted reliability surveys. Now's the time to put us to the test. Experience one of our award-winning cars and enjoy an exclusive upgrade to Peugeot. Offer now at Telford Motors Telford. Make sure your next car is built with pride. Rediscover Peugeot today. Terms and conditions apply. Offer available until September 30th. For JD Power 2019 award information, visit jdpower.com/award.
So that pretty much wraps it here at the Heritage Project contracts. So first of all, I'd like to say a very big thank you for them to just letting me come down and seeing this, because this isn't an opportunity that many people get to see. A big thanks to Georgia, who's arranged all this for me, and she's done all the gold work and all the gold leaf. Did you do the painting as well?
Yeah.
So the whole project's yours?
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. So you can see this on the top of the town. It's your nice little crown. That's a nice little treat, that is. So say hello to everyone. There you go. So a big thanks again to everyone here. It's been a really nice experience to come down and see everything in this form, because the next time we get to see it, it's going to be on top of the building and you're never going to get to see it in this detail. So until we go out on our next adventure, see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.